Welcome. You are here now, and nothing else matters. Not the ticking clock, not tomorrow's plans, not even the stories you're about to hear. Just breathe, slowly, and allow your shoulders to fall. You don't have to stay awake. In fact, it's better if you don't. You've arrived at a quiet place. A place of old stories and softer words. A place where time unravels gently, and myths hum softly beneath the hush of night. Tonight, we wander through the ancient lands of Greece. Not the Greece of textbooks or epic battles, but a quieter Greece. The Greece of hushed songs, of moonlight on marble, and of old gods who whisper rather than roar. In this gentle night, you will hear 3 myths, 3 stories, told not to excite you, but to soothe you, to ease your mind into a stillness, where dreams take over, and sleep begins. Let me tell you where we will go. First, we will follow the gentle poet Orpheus, whose music could tame the wildest beasts and stir the hearts of the gods. His love story with Eurydice is one of longing, of beauty, and of a quiet kind of heartbreak. It is a story set in the twilight between life and death, between melody and memory. Then we will drift into the skies, with Daedalus and his son, Icarus. We'll visit the great island of Crete, where inventions are born in silence, and freedom is measured in feathers and wax. It is a story of flight, of wonder, and of what happens when we reach too far, even if just for a moment. And lastly, we will rest with Endymion, a beautiful shepherd, so still, so serene, that the moon herself fell in love with him. His story is not of triumph or tragedy, but of slowness, of silence, of choosing sleep over glory, and being loved through endless nights. Each story will move slowly, like a soft tide brushing over stone. There will be no rush, no urgent heroes, only calm, quiet unfolding. As I speak, let the rhythm of these words become background. You don't need to listen too hard. You don't even need to remember them. Let them drift across your mind, like low clouds across an ancient sky. Tonight, you are safe, you are still, and you are free to let go. If you hear only the first few words, that's okay. If you drift off before the first story ends, even better, because these myths were made for sleep, told not to keep you awake, but to guide you gently into dreams. So now, make yourself comfortable. Sink deeper into your pillow. Feel the weight of your body soften. Let your eyes close, or flutter, or stay half-lidded as you listen. And in this stillness, let us begin with the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. Long ago, before cities rose from stone and reason replaced wonder, there lived a man whose fingers could pull music out of silence. His name was Orpheus. He was born with music in his blood, as if the world itself had placed a lyre in his hands, and whispered to him every note the stars had ever sung. Some say he was the son of a muse, Calliope, the goddess of epic poetry. Others say he learned from Apollo himself, the god of light, music, and hidden truths. But no matter the tale, all agree on one thing. When Orpheus played, the world listened. Mountains stilled, rivers slowed their course, wolves laid their heads down, and winds curled around his melody like a cradle. Even trees leaned closer, as if they, too, had hearts to be moved. Orpheus did not need armies, nor temples, nor gold. He carried nothing but a simple lyre, and with it, he made the earth weep, and smile, and hush. He did not use his music for power. He wandered, quietly, gently, through forest paths and stone villages, offering songs that warmed the weary, and stories that softened sorrow. His voice did not demand attention. It invited it, like the soft call of rain on a roof, or the hush of snow as it falls through the night. People would stop what they were doing when he passed, not out of duty, but because he made them feel like they were dreaming, and they didn't want to wake. In this world of rough voices and louder things, Orpheus was a whisper, but a whisper so beautiful. It echoed in every heart it touched. And so he wandered, with his lyre and his quiet songs. And no one knew that one day, His music would be tested by love, and by loss deeper than even his melodies could reach. But that comes later. For now, he simply played. And the world listened. Orpheus wandered as he always did, never looking for anything, but always finding something. He walked softly through the woods, bare feet brushing over leaves that whispered stories of their own. With his lyre in his arms and no destination in his mind, he let the world guide his steps. Like a river finds its way to the sea, he flowed without force. It was a morning dipped in golden light. The sun was still stretching, yawning through the branches above, casting soft lines across the moss and roots. Orpheus stopped at a clearing, a place the forest had made room for. He sat on a flat stone warmed by the sun, plucked a few notes from his lyre, and began to hum, not a song, but something more like a memory waiting to be born. That's when he saw her. Eurydice. She was not a queen or goddess, not wrapped in silk or riding in a chariot. She was simple, softly dressed, hair wild from the wind, carrying a small bundle of herbs she had gathered from the forest floor. She did not walk like someone who wanted to be seen. She moved like someone who belonged. To the trees, to the wind, to the quiet places that never asked for names. And yet, the moment Orpheus saw her, every sound in the forest paused, as if all of nature had taken a breath. She saw him, too, not the way a stranger sees a traveler, but the way dawn sees the first star, before it disappears. There was no thunder, no rush of fate, only stillness, only two souls, recognizing something they had not known they were missing. Orpheus spoke first, but not with words. He played, a soft melody, like mist curling through trees, a song with no beginning and no end, just emotion, laid bare in every note. Eurydice did not speak, but she stepped closer, drawn to the music like a dream she didn't want to end. When the final note faded, she looked at him with eyes that had heard everything he had not said. And Orpheus smiled, because she understood him, not just his music, but the silence between the music, too. They spent that morning in shared silence. He played, she listened, and the world around them slowed, as if nature itself did not want to interrupt. In the days that followed, they met again, and again, not by arrangement, but by gravity. Where he wandered, she appeared, and where she walked, he followed. They spoke in soft words and long pauses. They learned each other slowly, the way the moon learns the sea. Eurydice told him about the plants she gathered, the ones that healed fevers, and the ones that opened dreams. She showed him how to listen to the trees, how to press his ear to the bark and hear the heartbeat beneath. And Orpheus? He gave her music, songs shaped just for her, melodies that followed the rise and fall of her laughter, notes that mirrored the rhythm of her breath. He had sung to kings. He had played for gods. But for Eurydice, he created something different. He created silence between the strings, so she could rest inside it. Their love was not loud. It did not shout or chase. It moved like vines, quiet, slow, and unbreakable. They did not promise forever. They didn't need to. Each day, they met in the forest, beneath the bending branches, and made a world that existed only for them. Sometimes he would play, and she would close her eyes and lie back on the grass, listening as if the music came from the ground below. Other times, she would speak, and he would listen with the same reverence he gave to stars and thunder. They didn't talk of destiny or fate. They didn't wonder if the gods approved. They only loved, as simply and purely as a river loves the path it carves. In the village, people began to notice. They said the flowers bloomed brighter when Eurydice walked by, that Orpheus' songs had grown softer, deeper, as if he played from a place only she could reach. They said love had changed him, but it had not. It had revealed him. And for a time, that was enough. The world held its breath, and let them be. They walked hand in hand beneath twilight skies, sharing honeyed figs and laughter, leaving behind footprints in the dust that the wind refused to erase. In every glance, they said more than poems. In every quiet moment, they wrote a story without ink. The forest knew them. The birds watched them. Even the stars, those distant witnesses, seemed to shimmer more kindly when they passed. And so, in a world of chaos and flame, of heroes and monsters and quarrelsome gods, there bloomed a love untouched by pride or conquest. Just a man with a lyre, and a woman with wind in her hair. Together, they lived in that stillness, in the hush between storms. And though the world was always spinning, they moved as if time had paused, just for them. They didn't know how short forever would be. They didn't need to know, because for a moment, a perfect, impossible moment, they had everything. And sometimes, that's all love is. A moment, held gently, in the hands of the universe, before it drifts away, like music, into the dark. The forest whispered with anticipation. The air was full of birdsong, but even the birds seemed to sing a little softer that morning, as if they, too, understood that love like this did not come often. And when it did, the world leaned in to watch. Orpheus and Eurydice were to be married. There was no palace, no grand hall carved of marble, only the woods, the place where they had found each other, the place where their hearts had first spoken without words. The trees stood as tall as priests, their branches arched together like a cathedral of leaves, and the sun streamed through them like stained glass. There was no crowd, just a few friends, a few villagers, some curious animals, and the presence of something unseen, something divine. Orpheus played his lyre as she walked toward him, barefoot, with flowers tangled in her hair, smiling in the way that makes the air hold still. She looked like she belonged to the sky, borrowed just for this moment. And he looked at her as if the world had finally made sense. There were no elaborate vows, no declarations shouted to the heavens, just Orpheus whispering, "I see you," and Eurydice replying, "And I hear you." That was enough. That had always been enough. When they kissed, the trees rustled, and the wind, as if moved by joy, wrapped around them like a blessing. Laughter followed, gentle music, simple food and shared smiles. They danced barefoot on the earth, and for a time, they forgot the world beyond the forest's edge. But time, like all things in myth, has edges as sharp as fate, and even the most beautiful stories are only ever one page away from sorrow. It happened suddenly, too suddenly. Eurydice had stepped away, just for a moment. Some say she chased a butterfly, others that she bent to gather fallen petals. The story changes, but the ending never does. From the shadows, something stirred. A serpent. Its scales glinted like wet stone. Its tongue flicked like a warning. But there was no time for warnings. One step, one breath, one bite, and the music stopped. They found her lying in the tall grass, still, her hand curled gently around a white flower. There was no scream, no final word, only the sound of someone running, Orpheus crashing through the trees, his heart already breaking. Before he reached her, he fell to his knees. The lyre slipped from his shoulder and landed silently beside her, and all the songs in the world died in that moment. He held her hand. It was already cold, as if the forest had closed its arms around her and begun to take her back. He did not wail. He did not rage. He whispered her name, again and again, as though the syllables themselves could undo death. Eurydice. Soft as a prayer, soft as breath. But the gods did not answer, and neither did she. Villagers came. They touched his shoulder. They placed blankets over her. But Orpheus did not move. He sat beside her as the light dimmed, as the stars gathered like watchful eyes above the trees. Some say he stayed until morning. Others say he stayed for 3 days. No one is sure. But when he rose, he left the lyre behind. He walked out of the woods, not as a man, but as an ache given shape. He no longer played, no longer sang. And the world, the trees, the wind, the rivers, felt the silence he left behind. They say the birds stopped singing. that the wolves howled less, that the forest grew quiet in morning. He wandered again, but this time, not aimlessly. His steps were not those of a poet, but of someone searching for something he was not allowed to have. He visited temples. He lit candles. He whispered to the sky, but nothing brought her back. Nothing soothed the hollow she had left behind. Nothing but one thought, one terrible, impossible thought. There was one place she might still be, one place no mortal should go, one place where songs were useless, and shadows swallowed light. The underworld. He would go there. He would find her. He would play the saddest song the gods had ever heard, if it meant she could hear him again. He did not pack a bag. He did not carry food or fear. Only his lyre, the one he had left at her side. He had gone back for it, gently brushing the dirt from its strings, as if waking it from sleep. And then he walked. He followed no road, no guide, only sorrow, and the memory of her name. Orpheus, the gentle musician, was now Orpheus, the mourner, the wanderer, the man who would sing to death itself, if it meant one more moment, with the one he loved. And the world, helpless, watched him go. The world had not changed, not in the way it should have. The sun still rose, the stars still came out, the wind still moved the trees. But for Orpheus, everything had shifted, quietly, permanently. Grief doesn't arrive with thunder. It settles in like fog, slow, creeping, soft, until it's all you see. In the days after Eurydice's death, Orpheus became a shadow among the living. He no longer played, no longer sang. His lyre stayed silent at his side, as if mourning too. He wandered through empty meadows, past rivers that once mirrored their laughter. He sat for hours beneath the tree, where they once shared figs, and stories made of silence. Sometimes, he would close his eyes, and imagine her walking toward him, feet brushing over moss, hands full of herbs, eyes curious, warm, and real. But when he opened his eyes, only wind met his gaze, only the rustle of leaves, and the ache of a name, no longer answered. Eurydice. He said it not to summon her. He knew she could not come, but because speaking her name was the only thing that kept her near. Grief, you see, makes time soft. It stretches days like wool pulled too thin. It blurs the lines between now and then, between here and there. Orpheus did not count the days. He counted the songs he could no longer sing. He counted the breaths that felt heavier. He counted the steps that led him nowhere. But somewhere deep within him, a question formed, soft at first, a whisper that stirred only at dusk. What if she wasn't truly gone? Not gone, but waiting, waiting, somewhere beneath the world. The underworld, that place spoken of in half-believed tales. A kingdom of shadows, where the dead drift like leaves in a black river, where memories walk beside silence, where time has no edge, and nothing truly ends. No mortal went there. None returned. But Orpheus had something no other mortal had. He had his lyre. And he had love. The kind of love that did not unravel with death. The kind of love that refused stillness. One night, under a sky thick with stars, Orpheus sat alone at the edge of a cliff. The wind curled around him like a question. Below, the world fell into darkness. A sea of trees, a hush of night. He held the lyre in his lap, fingers resting against strings he had not touched in days. And slowly, almost unwillingly, he played. It was not a song of grief. It was not a song of longing. It was a question, a gentle plea, a way to say, I am still here. Are you? The notes drifted upward, into the stars. And the stars, though they said nothing, seemed to pause. Somewhere, far below, far beyond, a door stirred. He played again the next night, and the next. Each time, the song grew clearer, as if it remembered itself. And each night, he felt the pull, a tug in his chest, not toward the sky, but downward, toward roots, toward stone, toward the place where endings wait. The underworld. He began asking the old ones. Priests. Wanderers. Women who sat near fires and spoke with half-closed eyes. How does one reach the underworld? He whispered. They answered in riddles. Find the cave that drinks moonlight but casts no shadow. Look where the river sings backward. Ask the earth. She remembers where all her children sleep. And so he searched. He wandered deeper than before, past the forests he knew, into places where birds no longer sang. He walked where the trees leaned in, close and listening, as if they knew where he was going. And why? One evening, as twilight brushed the sky in lavender and ash, he came upon a fissure in the earth, a crack so narrow it could barely be seen. But it hummed, low, constant, a sound that vibrated in his bones. He stepped closer. Cool air spilled out from within, air that did not belong to this world. It smelled of stillness, of stone, of something old, something waiting. And there, he knew, this was the way, the entrance, a path not made of stone, but of sorrow. He stood at the threshold, lyre on his back, hands trembling not with fear, but with knowing. He did not say goodbye. There was no one to hear it. Instead, he took one step forward, then another, and the light faded behind him, like a candle being swallowed by an endless night. The journey downward was not fast. The underworld does not reveal itself in a rush. It unfolds. With each step, the air grew colder, thicker, as if it had been untouched for centuries. No torches lined the path. No signs marked the way. Only silence. Deep, patient silence. Orpheus played softly as he walked, not to light his way, but to keep himself company, to keep the shadows from becoming too large. The melody was steady, like the sound of a heartbeat, a reminder that he was still among the living. For now, sometimes he heard whispers, not words, but the sighs of memories, of names lost to time. Sometimes he saw flickers, figures in the dark, eyes that watched but did not move. But he did not stop. Not when the ground grew uneven. Not when the air turned to mist. Not even when he reached the river Styx and saw its waters move not with current, but with grief. The ferryman was waiting. Karen, old, silent, cloaked in the kind of stillness that only eternity can make. He did not speak. Orpheus did not offer coin. He offered song. A single note. Pure, clear, like morning on the first day of spring. Karen listened. He closed his eyes. And then, wordless, he nodded. The boat rocked gently as Orpheus stepped in. The river moaned beneath them, a sound of everything ever lost. They crossed slowly, and when they reached the other side, Orpheus stepped onto the shore of the dead. He had made it. He was here, in the realm where nothing lives, where love should not reach, but he had brought it with him anyway. Love, and music, and in this place, they were more powerful than swords, than prayers, than fate itself. The shores of the underworld were not made of sand or stone. They were made of memory, of footsteps that never echoed, of sighs that rose but never reached the surface. Orpheus stood at the edge of this world, a world without sun, without seasons, without breath. The river Styx behind him now. He turned toward the winding path ahead. It was not a road in the way we understand. It was a feeling, a pull, a direction that could only be followed by the heart. The air was thick, but not heavy. It carried weight not in form, but in history. Each breath Orpheus took felt borrowed, as though this realm allowed him to inhale only because it hadn't noticed him yet. He walked slowly, not out of fear, but reverence. The underworld was quiet, not the silence of sleep, but the silence of things that had seen too much, and no longer wished to speak. Orpheus played as he walked. His fingers barely touched the strings, yet the notes carried like lanterns ahead of him. They lit no fire, but they made the shadows pause, made the mist tremble. Each note was soft and slow, a lullaby woven from morning, a melody that asked, "Have you seen her?" And then asked again, gently, "Have you seen her?" He passed the field of asphodel, where souls wandered in gentle confusion, not punished, not praised, just there, moving in circles, murmuring fragments of lives long faded. They looked at him with eyes like water, unblinking, timeless, not curious, but aware, as if they knew what he had come for. He played for them, a single verse, something simple, like the memory of warmth. And for a moment, a still moment, some of the souls paused. They did not remember their names, but they remembered love and music, and then they moved on, swept again into the quiet tide of forgetting. Orpheus walked further, down slopes that spiraled like old thoughts, through caverns where even echoes had forgotten how to return. He passed the grove of suicides, trees that wept instead of blooming. Each trunk bore scars, names whispered in broken breath. He played for them, too, not to fix, not to save, but to say, "I see you." And the trees grew still, as if listening with their roots. Deeper still, he came to the river Lethe, the river of forgetting. It whispered promises. Lay down your grief. Forget her name. Let go of pain. The river tried to pull at his thoughts, to erase his purpose, with comfort. But Orpheus tightened his grip on his lyre. He played a dissonant chord, a reminder of pain, of love that refused to fade. The river recoiled. Its waters hissed, but they did not rise. He moved on. Then came the gates, tall, cold, and unmoving, guarded by Cerberus, the great three-headed hound, each head a sentinel. For hunger, for fury, for sorrow. The beast stirred as Orpheus approached, claws scraping ash, teeth bared in silence. But Orpheus did not draw back. He did not flinch. He sat and played, a song not of war, but of sleep, a melody built on gentle rhythms, like a mother rocking a child, in a cradle of stars. He played of warm earth and distant thunder, of soft rains and hands held in the dark, of things even monsters long to remember. One head lowered first, then the second, then the third, and Cerberus, guardian of the gates, lay down and slept. Orpheus stepped over its paws, as though passing through a dream. He entered a hall of stone, where time had grown still and cold. This was the palace of Hades and Persephone, the king and queen of the dead. No torches burned, no banners flew. The walls did not speak, but the floor remembered every soul that had passed across it. And there, on thrones carved from silence and ash, sat the rulers of this realm. Hades, dark-eyed, unmoved, with a gaze that pierced bone. Persephone, beautiful and distant, half shadow, half spring. Her presence a question, never fully answered. They did not speak as Orpheus entered. They did not welcome him. They watched, as if trying to decide whether to call him brave or foolish. Orpheus bowed, and then he played, not a plea, not a demand, but a story of a woman in sunlight, hair tangled by breeze, smiling at a boy who had never known such warmth. A story of footsteps across soft grass, of laughter pressed between two hearts. He played the wedding, the dance, the kiss, the look, and then he played the loss, the silence, the snake, the breath that did not come back. He played his grief, the ache that kept him walking, the hope that pulled him downward. And when he played the moment he crossed the threshold of the underworld, he let the strings tremble. He let them break, so the gods would know he was not whole. He played until the air thickened, until Persephone placed her hand on her chest, until even Hades' eyes, black and eternal, softened. And when the last note faded, Orpheus said only 3 words, "Let her go." The hall was silent. Then came the voice of Persephone, gentle as snowfall. "Your love has moved the stone," she said. "Your song has filled the cracks in this world with light." And Hades, in a voice like distant thunder, added, "She may return, but under one condition." Orpheus did not blink. "You will lead her out. Walk ahead of her, through the shadows, back to the world of light. But you must not look back. Not even once. Not until you both have returned." Orpheus nodded, and in the mist behind the thrones, a shape emerged. She stepped forward slowly, her face familiar, yet dimmed by the shadow of death. Eurydice. She did not speak. She did not cry, but her eyes held the memory of everything they had been. Orpheus reached for her, but stopped. The rule had already begun. He turned, faced forward, and began to walk. Her footsteps behind him were light, barely a sound, but they were there. She was there, and together, in silence, they began the long journey back to the world above. The hall of the underworld was unlike any palace of the living. It had no windows. No breeze stirred its air. No fire warmed its corners. It was shaped not by ambition, but by inevitability. Everything here had been surrendered. Names, faces, time, all of it left behind like a coat at the edge of a river. You're never meant to cross back. And at the far end of this vast, silent chamber, two thrones stood. Not gold, not marble, not draped in velvet, but carved from stone. So ancient, so unmoved, that they seemed to have grown from the bedrock itself. Upon them sat two figures, rulers of all who could no longer turn back. Hades, and Persephone. He was stillness wrapped in form, eyes dark as obsidian, skin the color of clouded ash. His presence was not loud, but it pressed down like the weight of forgotten years. He did not speak. He did not move, but he watched, with eyes that had seen the fall of kings, the passing of heroes, the unraveling of empires. He knew all endings, and he wore them like a cloak. Persephone sat beside him, a paradox in bloom. Where he was winter, she was the echo of spring, pale as snow, with hair like woven night and petals. She looked like someone who had once been light, and still remembered what it felt like. Though she sat beside the god of endings, she did not belong only to the dark. She belonged to the in-between, to twilight, to dusk, to the brief hush between heartbeat and breath. As Orpheus entered, his steps made no sound. The music had stopped now. There was only the soft swish of mist, the distant thrum of stillness, and the quiet bravery of one mortal heart. He bowed, not deeply, but with reverence, not as one who feared them, but as one who understood the weight they carried. He stood tall again, but not proud. He stood as one who had nothing left to hide. And then, his fingers moved across his lyre. No flourish, no performance, only truth. The room listened. He did not plead for her return with words. He told them who Eurydice was, not through stories, but through sound. He played the first time he saw her, the sunlight on her hair, the hush of breath when their eyes met. He played the laughter that once filled the forest, the way her fingers brushed his when passing a fig, the way time had stopped when she smiled. He played their wedding, the soft bells, the slow dance, the pause before the kiss, and then, the end, the grass, the serpent, the silence. He played the ache of loss, the weight of nights that would not sleep, the taste of a name spoken to no one. He let the notes shiver, as though the lyre itself wept through its strings. And when he finished, there was no echo, only breath, only waiting. Persephone moved first, her eyes, heavy with knowing, filled with something rare in that place, softness. She looked not at Orpheus, but at the space beside him, at the absence that followed him like a shadow. She waits, she said softly. Even in death, she listens for your song. Orpheus lowered his head. Hades' voice came next, not raised, but deep, final. You have moved the still heart of this kingdom, he said. Few mortals enter. None leave with what they seek. A pause, the weight of decision. But today, the rules will bend. And then the condition. She will follow you, Hades said, but you must walk ahead. And you must not look back. Not once. Not until the light of the world touches you both. If you turn before then, even for love, she will return to us. Forever. Orpheus did not speak. He nodded. Slow. Certain. A quiet kind of courage. And then Persephone raised her hand. From the far side of the misted hall, a figure emerged. Eurydice. She walked slowly, as though waking from a long dream. Her steps made no sound. Her face, though touched by the stillness of death, was unchanged to him. She was there. She was real. But the rule had already begun. Orpheus could not reach for her, could not speak. He turned, faced the path that would lead them upward, back through shadow, back toward the world. Behind him, her presence was a breath, a heartbeat, a memory held just out of reach. And so he stepped forward, and the journey began. They say that silence in the underworld has its own weight, that it settles on the shoulders of those who enter, pressing gently but firmly, like the hand of time. And now, Orpheus carried that silence in front of him, and Eurydice followed within it. He did not turn. He could not. The air between them was fragile, like a glass bridge stretched across eternity. One look, one crack, and it would vanish. So he walked, and behind him came the sound he longed for most. Her footsteps. Soft, even, real. Each one a promise. She is still there. But the path out of the underworld was not straight. It twisted like memory. It curved like longing. Mist clung to his ankles. The air thinned as the stone corridor grew narrower. Then widened again. Then narrowed once more. The walls pulsed with shadows. But Orpheus kept his gaze forward. He could hear the whisper of her dress, moving against the ground. He could sense her warmth, like a fire not yet touched. But he could not see her. And the further they walked, the harder it became. Not because the way grew darker, but because the heart is a restless thing. Doubt creeps in like ivy. Slow, unseen, persistent. What if she isn't there anymore? What if the footsteps he hears are only echoes? What if Hades lied? What if she has already turned to mist? What if she is reaching for him now, and he is too proud to turn? Orpheus pressed forward. He tried to steady his breathing. One inhale, one exhale. The path grew steeper. The incline slight, but noticeable. The walls cracked with small veins of light. And far ahead, far ahead, he could see the faintest bloom of gold. The world above. Daylight. The end of shadow. He was close. But with each step toward the light, the presence behind him felt more fragile. He could no longer hear her dress. Could no longer feel her warmth. Was she still there? He reached with his senses. With his heart. Nothing. The silence had returned, filling the space behind him like water in a well. He stopped. Only for a second. Only to listen. But silence answers nothing. Still. He did not turn. He stepped forward again. And again. And again. But now, his mind shouted louder than his footsteps. What if she has fallen behind? What if she stumbled? What if she called out, and I didn't hear her? What if she is gone, and I walked this far, for nothing? Orpheus tightened his grip on the lyre. He was not far now. Just a few more steps, and he would be in the light. She would too. And then he could look. He could hold her again. He could breathe. But the doubt twisted deeper. What if I reach the light, and she does not? What if I walk out alone? The world outside was only a breath away. The sun was waiting. The wind, the trees, the sky, and all she had to do was follow one more step. But the silence screamed now. It clawed at him. And the heart. Oh, the heart is not built for waiting. It loves. It leaps. It breaks. And Orpheus was human. He stopped. The threshold was ahead. He could see the stone crack open. He could smell the wind of the living. Hear the distant hum of bees. Feel the sunlight reaching forward like a hand. And still, he could not hear her. He turned. It was just a glance. But the gods do not measure in moments. They measure in obedience. He turned. And in that instant, he saw her, Eurydice. Her eyes widened. Not in fear, not in blame, but in something deeper. A knowing that they were too close, and yet still not close enough. Her hand reached toward him, fingers outstretched, hair drifting as if caught in slow wind. Her lips parted, as if to say something, but no sound came. And then, she was gone. Not torn, not dragged, simply unmade, folded back into the mist, from which she had come. Orpheus stood at the edge of the light, his hands empty, his eyes open. The birds outside continued to sing. The breeze carried on. The forest swayed as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed, because the moment he turned, he carried not just loss, but the memory of one last look. And that, the gods would not let him forget. She was there. And then, she wasn't. No thunder, no scream, no collapse, just a quiet unraveling, like mist dissolving under the first warmth of morning, as if she had only ever been a breath, held too long in the dark. One moment, Eurydice stood behind him, alive in the hush of shadow, and the next, she was gone. Her eyes, the last part of her to disappear, had said everything. Not blame, not fear, not sorrow, only acceptance, a kind of peaceful sadness, as if she had known, somewhere in her still heart, that this ending was always waiting. Orpheus reached for her, but his hand closed on nothing. The space where she had stood was colder now. He felt it settle over him like ash. He tried to speak her name, but it caught in his throat, a sound too full of hurt to make its way into the world. He stood just beyond the threshold, at the very mouth of life. The forest bloomed around him. A breeze moved through the trees. A bird chirped gently nearby. But inside Orpheus, only silence grew. He had come so far. He had faced gods and monsters, walked through lands without time, sung songs no mortal had ever dared to sing. He had found her, and she had followed. But all of that, the journey, the promise, the love that defied death itself, was now reduced to one quiet moment and one irreversible glance. The weight of it pressed on him, like the earth itself had shifted to remind him what it means to be human, to hope, to falter, to lose. He stepped away from the entrance, slowly, as if each footfall might still bring her back. But she did not return. The wind touched his face like a ghost. The sunlight now felt too warm, too cruel. And still, he held the lyre, that small, wooden thing. His voice, his weapon, his prayer. It had brought him this far. But now, his fingers would not move. He walked through the trees like a sleepwalker, not weeping, not calling, just walking. The forest watched, but did not interrupt. Birds quieted as he passed. Even the river slowed its music. There are griefs that bend the spine, and then there are griefs that bend the soul. Orpheus carried the latter. In the days that followed, he did not return to the village. He did not speak to others. He wandered, as he once had, but now not to sing, not to heal, not to tell stories, only to remember. He found the meadow where they first met, sat upon the same stone, touched the grass where she once stood barefoot. He played there once, a single note, soft and slow, and the wind carried it away, like a secret, too fragile to be heard. Sometimes he would imagine that she was near, just behind a tree, just beyond the next hill. And for a moment, he would smile, but it never lasted, because memory, no matter how vivid, cannot hold hands. Nymphs, fauns, even gods, came to him. They asked for songs, for stories, for healing, but Orpheus gave them none. His lyre remained silent. Its strings grew dusty, its voice asleep. And so, the world moved on. But Orpheus did not. They say he walked farther than any man, to coasts no map had ever drawn, to mountaintops where even the wind forgot how to climb. And always, he listened, for her voice, for her breath, for a sign. But death does not echo back, not even for those who loved deeply, not even for those who sang, to the very heart of the gods. One evening, under a sky full of stars that blinked without mercy, Orpheus sat by a still lake. He looked into the water, and imagined her face. And for a moment, he saw her, not clearly, but enough to close his eyes, and remember the way she laughed, the way she turned her head slightly, when she listened to his songs. He whispered her name, one last time, and the trees, ever loyal, whispered it back, Eurydice. The wind carried it, the lake held it, and somewhere, perhaps, a spirit paused to listen. Orpheus stayed like that, until the stars grew tired, and the night gave way to dawn. He did not rise, he did not run, he simply remained, as if by standing still, he could bring back what had once been. But even the most beautiful songs must end, even the gentlest hearts must break. And Orpheus, the man who loved so deeply, that he walked into death itself, was now only a quiet story, told by the trees. There are some losses the world does not mend, some wounds that do not heal, but instead become rivers, carving new shapes into the soul. With every passing season, Orpheus did not return to his old life. He did not gather crowds. He did not teach, or perform, or seek fame. He drifted, a man without destination, a traveler of memory. The places they had touched together were the ones he returned to most often. The meadow, the grove, the river bend where she had once hummed, along with his song, without even realizing it. Now, he hummed alone, and the trees hummed with him, not to fill the silence, but to honor it. Sometimes he would play again, but only for the wind, only for the sky, only for her. His songs had changed. They no longer tried to heal. They no longer danced. They were quieter now. They lingered in the air like soft snowfall. They asked no questions, but held all the answers. The animals gathered when he played. Foxes curled at his feet. Birds settled on his shoulders. Even the streams paused in their flow, so they might hear how sorrow could be beautiful. His grief became legend. But Orpheus never sang of legends. He sang only of Eurydice, of her laugh, of her quiet, of the way her hand fit into his. He never married again, never touched another with the same softness. His heart remained where he had left it, in the half-light, between this world and the next. Years passed. Seasons turned like pages in a forgotten book. And though his hair grayed, and his hands wore the years like old gloves, his music still held the same ache. The ache of a love interrupted, but never erased. It said that the gods looked upon Orpheus with a kind of quiet respect, not because he had entered the underworld. Many had tried that. Few returned. But because, after failing, he did not curse them. He did not rage. He carried his sorrow, like a candle cupped in trembling hands, never letting it blow out, never letting it burn the world. He lived between the notes, between the breath and the cry, and in doing so, he became something more than mortal. He became memory, but even memory cannot outrun the ending. The world, ever restless, moved forward, and Orpheus, like all who belong more to silence than to sound, began to fade. Some say he died by a riverbank, under a tree whose leaves refused to fall that year. That the birds who had once followed his music, gathered for one last song, sung not by him, but for him. Others say that jealous men, unmoved by his silence, threatened by his grief, ended his life with cruel hands. But none of those stories matter now. What matters is this. When Orpheus passed, the world paused, the wind stopped, the stars blinked slower, the water stilled, and somewhere, deep in the folds of a forgotten land, Eurydice turned. She looked up, eyes gentle, heart still quiet. And for the first time in an age, she smiled, because she knew he was coming, not as a rescuer, not as a song, but simply as himself, without rules, without trials, without conditions. He was no longer of the living, and the underworld, which had once taken her from him, now gave her back. They met not with fanfare, but with familiarity, as if the pause between them had lasted only a breath. They walked side by side. No need for words. They had said everything, through silence long ago. And as they drifted into shadow, hand in hand, a single flower bloomed, at the place where he last played. It had no name, no scent, but those who passed it often stopped. They felt something, not sadness, not longing, but peace. And somewhere in the rustle of leaves, if you listened closely, you might still hear a melody, soft, slow, and eternal. The story of Orpheus and Eurydice was no longer a tragedy. It was a lullaby, a quiet promise that love, once true, does not end. It simply changes form. And if you're very still, if you close your eyes tonight and listen to the hush between breaths, you might hear it too. The song that waited, the love that remained, the boy who played, and the girl who listened, together, at last. Long ago, in the golden hush of the ancient world, there lived a man whose hands could reshape fate, whose mind could bend the laws of nature, without ever breaking them. His name was Daedalus. To some, he was an inventor. To others, an artist. To a few, especially kings, he was a miracle. But Daedalus did not call himself anything. He simply created. He built not just things, but possibilities. Wood obeyed him. Stone trusted him. Even the wind, at times, seemed to linger longer around his work, as if curious how a mortal could know so much. He came from Athens, but his fame stretched farther. He was called to palaces, to temples, to places where dreams required blueprints. He did not chase admiration, but it followed him, like a quiet shadow. And in time, that shadow reached the shores of Crete. The island was a place of sharp cliffs and rich earth, of thunder rolling from mountains, and waves that curled like whispers around its shores. Its king, Minos, had heard of Daedalus, not just the work, but the mind behind it. And so he summoned him, not with threats, not with gold, but with a promise. Build what has never been built. Shape what cannot be shaped. And Crete will become your canvas. Daedalus accepted, not for glory, but for challenge. He arrived with little more than his tools. And his son, Icarus, a boy full of questions, and eyes wide as the sea itself. They lived not in a palace, but in a quiet chamber high above the city, where the wind passed freely, and the stars came close at night. From there, Daedalus dreamed. He built statues that seemed to breathe, doors that opened only at certain hours, aqueducts that sang, when the water ran through them just right. But it was not these marvels that earned him the most attention. It was the labyrinth. But that comes later. For now, Daedalus built in peace. Each morning, he would rise with the sun, not because he had to, but because ideas waited for him, like birds ready to be released. And Icarus watched, not always with understanding, but with admiration. He followed his father through workshops filled with gears, through courtyards littered with prototypes and sketches. Sometimes he asked questions. Sometimes he simply listened. Daedalus didn't speak often. He preferred his hands to do the explaining. But he always smiled when Icarus entered. Because love, like invention, needs no words to be real. They lived in a kind of stillness, the quiet of creation, the hush of focus, the space between heartbeat and idea. Crete gave Daedalus space. It gave him puzzles. And for a time, that was all he needed. But even brilliance cannot stay hidden forever. And soon, a secret darker than invention would call him from his peace. Beneath the beauty of Crete, beneath the light that danced on olive trees, and the blue hush of the Aegean, there stirred a secret that no one spoke aloud. A secret in the shape of a boy, but not quite. They called it the Minotaur, born of pride and gods, of punishment and mistake. It was a creature with the body of a man, and the head of a bull. It did not belong to either world, not the wild, and not the human. It breathed. It hungered. It ached for something it could never name. King Minos feared it. He did not understand it, and so he locked it away. But where does one hide a thing that should not exist? Minos turned to Daedalus. He did not shout. He did not plead. He simply asked, softly, heavily, make a place where no one can find their way. A prison without doors. A maze without mercy. And Daedalus, who had never refused a challenge, nodded. He began with drawings. Not straight lines, but spirals. Corners that doubled back. Paths that narrowed, then opened like lungs. He did not think of it as a trap. He thought of it as a question. A shape the mind could not hold all at once. The labyrinth. Stone upon stone. Wall upon wall. An endless fold of hallways, twisting in silence. It was built near the palace. But beneath it, buried in shadow, and at its heart, its terrible, lonely heart, was the Minotaur. Daedalus never saw the creature up close. He was not invited that far in. But sometimes, in the quiet of early morning, he would hear it. A low, sad bellow. Not of rage, not of hunger, but of longing. And it stayed with him, because even monsters, he thought, must feel alone. When the labyrinth was finished, Minos was pleased. No one would ever find their way out of it, he said. Not without Daedalus' help. And Daedalus, though proud of the creation, felt something shift in his chest. He had made a masterpiece. Yes, but he had also made a cage. And cages, no matter how clever, carry a weight. Life continued above. The gardens bloomed. The courtyards echoed with music. But below, hidden in shadow and stone, a creature paced, trapped, feared, forgotten, and slowly, Crete forgot who had built the labyrinth. But Daedalus remembered. He visited the plans less often, stopped drawing mazes, stopped sketching gears. He spent more time with Icarus, taught him how to balance feathers on breath, how to listen to the wind, the way others listened to silence. They would walk along the cliffs, watching gulls glide over the sea. Icarus always asked the same question. Could we fly like that? And Daedalus always gave the same answer. A smile, and a gentle not yet. But the seed had been planted, and in the years to come, it would bloom into wings. But before that, before the flight, before the fall, came the betrayal. For in a kingdom of secrets, no one stays trusted forever. Minos came to suspect Daedalus had shared the secrets of the labyrinth with one he should not have, a girl named Ariadne, a thread, a hero who escaped. And though Daedalus had not meant harm, his knowledge had freed someone Minos wished lost. So the king turned on him. There was no trial, no warning, only an order. Lock him away. Him and the boy. They were placed not in the dungeons, but high, in a tower above the sea. So high the gulls circled below. So high the wind screamed through the cracks, like a voice trying to break free. Daedalus was not afraid. He had lived too long with puzzles, to be frightened by walls. But Icarus looked at the window each day, with longing in his chest, and questions in his throat. Will they keep us here forever? And Daedalus, his voice slow, calm, replied, not forever, just until we remember how to reach the sky. And in that tower, surrounded by salt and silence, Daedalus began to dream again, not of mazes, but of feathers, of wind, and wax, and wings. The tower stood alone, high above the rest of Crete, a column of stone reaching into the sky, quietly forgotten by those below. Its walls were thick, its windows narrow, its doors bolted from the outside. But the view was endless. From its single, high arch, you could see the sea spread out in all directions. A great sheet of silver blue that rose and fell like a slow breath. And beyond that, the sky, so vast, so open, so free. That is where they lived now. Daedalus and his son, Icarus. They were not chained, but they were not free. And that is sometimes the crueler thing. Days passed slowly, folding into one another like soft cloth. Each morning arrived with the same light, and the same silence. Daedalus would rise early, as he always had, not because he had work to do, but because he did not know how to be still. He would walk the length of the stone floor, counting the lines between bricks, not to measure distance, but to measure time. Icarus slept longer, dreamed more. He was younger, the kind of young that still believes. Everything broken can be rebuilt, if only you find the right shape. He would wake and look out the window, not down, but up. He watched the birds most of all. The gulls, the hawks, the swallows with wings like drawn arrows. They don't think about it, he said one morning, his voice half-wrapped in sleep. They just do it. Do what? Daedalus asked, though he knew. Fly. Daedalus smiled, but didn't answer, because flight, he knew, was never just about wings. It was about direction, and trust, and letting go of the ground, even when the ground is all you've ever known. In the early days, they spoke often. Icarus asked questions about the stars, about how time worked, about what it meant to build things, only to have them taken away. Daedalus answered as best he could, sometimes with stories, sometimes with silence. He showed Icarus how to fold paper into shapes, how to balance pebbles on the edge of window ledges, how to watch the way shadows moved, and guess the hour from their slant. They carved small figures from scraps of wood, boats, animals, spinning wheels, not because they were useful, but because hands need purpose. And in the stillness, they found a rhythm. But time, when stretched too thin, becomes brittle. The days began to feel longer, the nights too quiet. Icarus stopped asking as many questions. He started pacing like his father. He watched the birds not with wonder, but with ache. Do you think they miss us? He asked one evening, his chin resting on his knees. Daedalus looked up from the bit of cloth he was twisting into rope. Who? The world. Daedalus thought for a long time, and then said, perhaps, but the world keeps turning, whether we are part of it or not. Icarus frowned. That doesn't seem fair. It isn't, Daedalus replied, softly. They sat in silence then, listening to the waves crash below. The sea, like the sky, did not notice their prison, and maybe that hurt most of all. One afternoon, a storm rolled in. Dark clouds wrapped the tower like a cloak. Rain lashed the window. Lightning stitched the sky. Icarus stood by the window the entire time. He didn't speak, just watched, his eyes wide, his breath held. When the storm passed, he turned to his father. Do you think we could ride the wind like that? Daedalus didn't answer. He only looked at his son, really looked, and something shifted inside him. Because in Icarus' question, he heard something more. Not curiosity, hope. And hope, even the smallest kind, is a dangerous thing to leave alone. That night, Daedalus did not sleep. He gathered the bits he had saved. Scraps of wax from old candles, twine pulled from their clothes, feathers collected from the windowsill, bones of birds that had struck the stone, and never flown again. He laid them out carefully, as if each piece had been waiting for this moment. And as the moon passed overhead, Daedalus began to work. Not to escape. Not yet. But to believe again. Morning came softly. Icarus woke to find his father, surrounded by feathers and wax and thread. What are you making? He asked, blinking. Daedalus looked up. Something impossible. The tower had become something else now. No longer just a prison. No longer only stone and silence. It had become a workshop once more. A cradle for ideas. A space where hope took quiet, careful shape. Daedalus worked without haste. Each movement of his hand was deliberate. Each stitch thoughtful. This was not a project born of desperation. It was born of patience. And love. Feathers gathered from the windowsill. Small ones, large ones, broken ones, were cleaned and sorted. Thread unraveled from garments was spun into cords. Wax melted over a quiet flame was poured gently into wooden molds. Softened, then cooled again. Bit by bit, he began to build. 2 sets, not one, because if there was to be freedom, it would not be his alone. Icarus watched with wide eyes, knees pulled to his chest, as the wings began to take form. At first, he thought it was a sculpture, then a puzzle, then maybe just a way to pass the time. But slowly, as the bones took shape, and the curve of the wing began to resemble the very birds that circled above, he understood. You mean to fly? It wasn't a question. It was wonder, wrapped in breath. Daedalus looked up from his work. There was wax on his fingers, feathered dust in his hair. Yes, he said, we must. The wings were unlike anything the world had known. Light, but strong. Structured like a bird's, but shaped by the hand of man. Daedalus did not try to mimic nature exactly. He respected it too much for that. Instead, he borrowed, learned, improvised. The armature was wooden, flexible enough to move, but firm enough to carry weight. The feathers were layered carefully, longest at the ends, shorter toward the joints, just as nature arranged them. And the wax. It was the glue, the soft magic that bound it all together. When he finished the first set, he held them up to the light. They caught the sun through the tower window, casting a shadow shaped like a dream, across the stone floor. Then came the fitting. Straps were fashioned from cloth, and fastened around the arms and chest. The wings could open and close, with the motion of the shoulders, controlled by cords tied to small rings near the wrists. It was not perfect, but it was real. Daedalus put them on first. He did not try to fly yet, just stood near the open window, feeling the weight of them, the balance. Icarus watched every movement, silent, still, and then his voice, soft as a whisper. Will they carry us? Daedalus turned toward his son, and nodded slowly. They will carry us, as far as we are willing to trust them. The second pair was smaller, fitted for Icarus, made with the same care, but with lighter bones, shorter span. As he worked, Daedalus explained the details. Don't fly too low, he said, or the sea mist will soak the wings, and make them too heavy. And don't fly too high. The sun will soften the wax, and the wings may fall apart. Icarus nodded, again and again. He heard his father's voice. He understood. But in his chest, something else stirred. Something that had waited all his life. Possibility. On the day of their flight, the sky was pale and wide, cloudless, quiet. The sea below was calm, moving in slow glimmers of blue. Daedalus tested the wind, held his palm out the window, watched the way the air moved. Along the cliff face, he secured the final straps, checked the bindings twice. Then again, he turned to Icarus. Are you ready? Icarus smiled. Not a wide, reckless smile, but a soft one. Hopeful. Steady. I've always been ready. Daedalus hesitated, not because he didn't believe in the wings, but because belief alone could not stop the sky from being wide, and a sun from reaching for it too hard. Still, he nodded, and they climbed to the ledge. The drop was sharp. Far below, the rocks lined the shore, like broken teeth. But the air was generous that day. They stood side by side, Daedalus and Icarus, shoulders trembling slightly under the new weight. One last look, not of fear, but of love. And then, they jumped. The world below fell away. Not with a crash, but like a slow, unfolding dream. Daedalus and Icarus, wings spread wide, became birds of a different kind, not born of feather and nest, but of wax and hope. The wind caught them gently at first, lifting, carrying, whispering promises only the sky can keep. Orpheus had once played music that made mountains pause. But this moment, this flight, was a song of silence. The two figures rose, leaning into the air as if it were a long-lost friend. The sea below mirrored the sky, an endless canvas of blue. Icarus laughed, a sound like light, like release. He soared higher, feathers catching the sun, casting flickers of gold onto the waves. Daedalus watched, heart full but cautious. "Remember," he said softly, "not too high, not too low." Icarus nodded but did not slow. The thrill of flight was a melody that pulsed in his veins. He felt free, weightless, unbound by earth or fear. The sea breeze carried them outward, across the cliffs and over the islands. They traced paths once traveled only by birds, dipping and gliding in the soft blue sky. From below, they seemed like shadows, ghosts with wings. But up here, above the worries of stone and sand, they were alive, alive in a way that made the air tremble. Icarus called out, his voice carried on the wind. "Father, look!" Daedalus turned his head. Icarus was climbing, rising higher than before, beyond the path they had planned. His wings gleamed like sunlight caught in glass. Daedalus felt a tug at his heart, a mixture of pride and dread. The sky was wide, but it was not endless. There was a sun, a heat, a truth he could not ignore. "Do not fly too high," Daedalus warned, but the words seemed to dissolve in the air. Icarus was caught in the joy of flight, the pure exhilaration of being free. He rose, like a star climbing to its place in the heavens. The sun caught the wings. Its warmth melted the wax that held the feathers together. At first, the feathers softened, then loosened. A few fell, then more. Icarus did not notice at first. He was too caught in the rush, too filled with the wild pulse of air beneath him. And then, the wings began to fail. Feathers fluttered away, falling like slow tears. Icarus' heart pounded, not from joy anymore, but from sudden fear. His arms flailed, searching for the sky that was slipping away. Below, Daedalus saw his sun falling, not slowly, not gently, but fast, like a stone dropped into the sea. He reached out, his voice breaking through the wind. "Icarus, no!" But the words were too late. The boy fell, through the air that had been his freedom, through the light that had held his dreams, and into the waves below. Daedalus landed hard. The wind knocked from his lungs. He looked down. The sea closed over the spot where Icarus had vanished. The water was calm again, unchanged, but Daedalus' world had shattered. He fell to his knees, hands trembling. The wings lay broken beside him, a testament to hope and loss. Tears blurred his vision, but his heart was too full to feel anything but ache. He whispered his son's name, Icarus. The sky held no bounds, no walls, no chains. The sky, the sea, the wind, all held their breath. And in that silence, Daedalus wept. Let me know when you're ready for segment 6. Icarus' joy, ambition, and fall, tilde 1200 words, continuing the story with quiet reflection and gentle narrative. The sky was a vast, endless ocean of blue, and Icarus was its shining star, bright, bold, and wild. He had never known freedom like this. The wind cradled him, whispering secrets only the clouds could understand. Every beat of his wings was a song of joy, a dance with the air. The world below, the cliffs, the sea, the gardens of Crete, were distant, muted colors, far away, but still within reach of his soaring heart. He felt alive, in a way that made his chest swell with light. Only space, only breath, only endless possibility. He climbed higher, past the cries of gulls, above the sweep of hawks. His wings caught the sun's golden fingers, each feather glowing like a flame. He laughed, a clear, bright sound, filled with wonder and delight. "Father, look at me," he called. His voice carried like a melody, light and free. Daedalus watched from below, eyes filled with both pride and worry. "Remember, Icarus," he called gently, not too high, not too low. But Icarus was lost to the joy of flight. The air grew warmer. The sun's gaze grew stronger. Wax, softened by heat, began to lose its grip. Feathers loosened. At first, only a few drifted away, like fallen petals on a summer breeze. But soon, more. Icarus felt a strange weight. His wings trembled. He tried to steady himself. Panic fluttered in his chest. His heart pounded like a drum. He reached out, clinging to the air, to the dream. But gravity, that silent, relentless force, pulled him down. Faster. Below, the sea waited, calm, unforgiving. The water's surface shimmered under the sun, glittering like broken glass. Icarus fell, not with anger, not with despair, but with the quiet surrender of a leaf letting go of its branch. He thought of his father, the steady hands, the quiet eyes. He thought of the tower, of the walls that held him before, and then, of the sky he had touched, and almost believed was his. He closed his eyes. The last thing he felt was the rush of wind, and the gentle embrace of the sea. Daedalus heard the splash, felt it in his bones. He turned to the edge, looked down. The water was smooth again, like a mirror untouched. His sun was gone. The world held its breath. Daedalus fell to his knees. The wings lay broken beside him, feathers scattered like fallen stars. His hands trembled as he reached for the remains. Tears came, slow and heavy. He whispered, "Icarus." The grief was a vast ocean, endless and deep. Daedalus did not move for a long time. He sat by the cliff, watching the waves roll in and out. The sea seemed endless, but so was his sorrow. For all the invention, all the hope, he could not change what had happened. He had taught his son to fly, but not how to fall. The birds circled overhead, silent witnesses to loss. The wind carried no songs. Even the sea seemed to mourn. But in the quiet, Daedalus began to understand. Freedom comes with a cost, joy with risk, love with pain, and sometimes, the greatest courage is to keep moving forward. When the sky has fallen, he gathered what remained of the wings. Slowly, carefully, he folded the feathers and wax, and wrapped them in cloth. He held them close, not as a failure, but as a memory, a promise, that even when the wings break, the spirit of flight remains. Daedalus turned away from the cliff, walking slowly back to the tower, his heart heavy, but still beating. The world continued. The sun dipped low, and the shadows grew long. And somewhere, in the distance, a new day waited to be born. The sea held secrets. It cradled them quietly beneath its surface, like whispers folded into the deep. Daedalus stood at the edge of the world he once knew. The cliffs of Crete rose behind him, sharp and familiar, like memories etched in stone. But ahead was the unknown, the soft call of open water, and the promise of a new land. His heart was heavy. The weight of loss pressed down on him, more surely than any stone wall ever had. Icarus was gone, gone beyond reach, beyond sorrow, gone into the quiet sea. For many days, Daedalus remained by the shore. He watched the waves ripple and break, and the wind move through the salt air. He let the grief settle over him like a cloak, thick, cold, and all-encompassing. The world moved on without him. Birds flew overhead, fishermen cast their nets, and the sun rose and set in a steady rhythm. But Daedalus felt untethered, adrift between the shore and the sky, between what was and what might have been. He did not speak much. Words felt hollow, only the sound of his footsteps. and the soft lap of waves accompanied him. One evening, as the sky melted from gold to deep violet, Daedalus sat beneath a lone olive tree. Its branches stretched toward the fading light, like arms seeking comfort. He closed his eyes and remembered the laughter of Icarus, the wonder in his eyes, the warmth of his small hand in his own, the boy who dreamed of flight, who reached for the sun, and touched it for a moment. Tears slipped silently down Daedalus' cheeks, not for the wings broken, but for the moment lost, for the chance never given. But grief, as deep as it is, cannot hold forever. After the long nights and the quiet days, Daedalus began to move, not because he had forgotten, or because he had healed, but because the world called him. The sea whispered of new lands, the wind spoke of new beginnings, and somewhere in his heart, a small spark glimmered. Hope. Daedalus gathered what little he had left. His tools, a few pieces of wax, scraps of cloth, and the memories carried like a sacred flame. He built a small boat, not grand, not swift, but enough to carry him, away from the place of loss, toward the place of promise. As the sun rose on the morning of his departure, he stood at the water's edge, feet sinking into the cool sand. He looked back once, at the cliffs, at the place where dreams had been born, and where a sun had fallen. Then, he turned. The sea welcomed him, not with song, but with steady arms. He pushed the boat into the water, and climbed aboard. The waves rocked gently beneath him, a cradle of movement and sound. And as the boat drifted away from Crete, Daedalus allowed himself to hope, to believe, that the horizon held more than loss. The journey was slow. The sun warmed his back, and the wind filled the sails. The days and nights blurred, like a dream that refuses to end. Daedalus thought often of Icarus, of the boy's bright eyes, his laughter like wind chimes, and the fire in his heart. He whispered stories to the sea, stories of hope, of courage, of love that never dies. Sometimes, he spoke to the stars, asking them to watch over his son, wherever he was. After many days, the shores of Sicily appeared, green hills rising gently from the sea, olive groves waving in the breeze. Daedalus felt a quiet peace settle over him. This was a place to rest, to begin again. He stepped onto the land, feet touching soft earth, the scent of flowers, the hum of insects, the warmth of the sun, all welcomed him, like an old friend. In Sicily, Daedalus found a new rhythm. He built workshops, crafted marvels once more, and shared his wisdom with those who would listen. But he never forgot. He carried Icarus in his heart, in every invention, in every quiet moment of creation. His grief was not a chain, but a thread that wove through his life, binding memory to hope. And though he never flew again, Daedalus learned that sometimes, to soar, one must first learn to walk through the quiet valley of sorrow. The stories of Daedalus and Icarus spread far and wide, tales of wings, of flight, of ambition and loss. Some whispered warnings, to respect the sky, to heed the sun. Others told of courage, of a father who dared to dream, and a son who dared to fly. But all spoke of love, deep, enduring, and true. And in that love, the world found its song. The story of Daedalus and Icarus is more than just one of flight and fall. It is a tale woven from threads of wisdom, balance, and the restless spirit of invention. Daedalus was a man who saw the world not just as it was, but as it might be. A man who dreamed with his hands, and built with his heart. He understood the fragile beauty of balance, between earth and sky, between courage and caution, between ambition and humility. The wings he crafted were not merely tools for escape. They were symbols of human desire to rise, to reach beyond limits, to touch the infinite. But they were also lessons. Lessons written in feathers and wax, in wind and sun. They whispered softly, reminding us that every flight must be measured, every leap must be tempered with care. For wisdom is not the absence of dreams, but the knowledge of when and how to dream. In the quiet moments after the fall, Daedalus did not curse the sky, nor blame the sun. He carried his grief, yes, but also his love and hope. He taught us that even in loss, there is a place for renewal, a place to rebuild, a place to begin again. In Sicily, he found peace, not in soaring heights, but in steady creation. His hands shaped new wonders, his mind whispered new ideas, and his heart held memories. Like a sacred flame, Icarus, too, became more than a story of fall. He became a symbol of youthful spirit, of daring, of the boundless joy of flight. His story reminds us that to live fully, to reach for the sun, is a gift worth cherishing, even when it carries risk. So, as you drift into sleep tonight, let the tale of Daedalus and Icarus settle softly in your mind. Remember the balance of wings, how they must catch the wind just so, how they must resist the heat and weight of the world. And remember that to dream, truly dream, is to honor both the earth beneath and the sky above. May your dreams be full of flight. May your heart hold both courage and wisdom. And may you find peace in every gentle breath. The sky is vast, the sea is deep, and the world waits quietly for each new morning. Long ago, in a world wrapped in quiet wonder, there was a land known as Caria, a place where the earth seemed to breathe slowly and deeply, where the sun poured warm honey over gentle hills, and rivers sang soft songs as they wound through valleys green and still. Caria was a land of whispers, of stories told in the rustle of leaves, and secrets held in the heart of ancient stones. It was a place untouched by the clamor of great cities, where time moved with the gentle pulse of nature itself. Here, rising like a quiet sentinel against the endless sky, stood Mount Latmus, a mountain wrapped in mystery and moonlight. Its slopes were a patchwork of wildflowers that swayed like a soft sea, its forests thick with ancient trees whose branches reached for the stars. The mountain had watched the passing of countless seasons, felt the touch of gentle rains and fierce winds alike, and held close the dreams of all who had ever wandered its paths. The villagers below spoke of Latmus with reverence, calling it the silent guardian, and telling tales of the spirits that danced beneath its shadow. Each night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the moon would rise slowly over Latmus, casting a silver glow that bathed the mountain's face, and softened the edges of the world. It was said that the moon loved Latmus, and that she watched over it with tender eyes, waiting for a story to unfold beneath her gentle light. And so, beneath the quiet watch of the moon, and among the wild beauty of Caria, the tale of Endymion began, a story of beauty and love, of sleep and eternal peace, that would be whispered through the ages. Endymion was a shepherd, but not like the others who tended flocks for coin or duty. He was a boy of quiet grace, with eyes deep and calm like still pools, and a face that seemed carved from moonlight itself. His beauty was not the kind that shouted or demanded attention. It was the soft kind, the kind that made the flowers lean toward him, and the birds sing in gentler tones. He walked the hills of Caria alone, not out of loneliness, but by choice. He found comfort in the quiet hum of nature, the rustle of grass, the whisper of wind through olive branches, the slow rise and fall of his own breath. Endymion did not speak much. Words seemed too loud for the delicate world he inhabited. Instead, he listened to the earth beneath his feet, to the stars that spilled secrets in the night, to the distant call of the moon. He was gentle with the creatures around him, a kind hand to a frightened fawn, a soft voice to calm restless birds. Some said he was blessed by the gods, touched by a kindness that made even the wild things trust him. But Endymion's solitude was not sadness. It was peace. He slept beneath the open sky, wrapped in a blanket of stars, dreaming dreams that no one else could see. And the moon watched. Selene, goddess of the night, had seen Endymion from her silver throne. She saw his quiet beauty, his gentleness, and the way he moved through the world, as if he were part of its soft breath. Her heart stirred with a longing that only gods and dreamers know. She descended from her place in the sky to visit him in secret, to watch over him as he slept, and to hold him in the light of her gaze. Their connection was silent but deep, a meeting of souls that needed no words. In the glow of moonlight, Endymion and Selene shared a world that was both ancient and eternal. A world where time did not rush, where love was a quiet song, heard only in the stillness between heartbeats. Selene, the radiant goddess of the moon, ruled the night skies with a grace as endless as the stars themselves. Her silver light poured gently over the world, touching mountains, rivers, and forests with a quiet glow. She was the keeper of dreams, the guardian of the night's secrets. From her place in the heavens, Selene often gazed upon the earth below, watching the rhythms of life unfold beneath her luminous watch. One evening, as the world softened into twilight, her gaze settled on Mount Latmus, where the gentle shepherd, Endymion, dwelled. There was something about him, not just his beauty, though that was undeniable, but the peaceful way he lived, the stillness he carried within himself, like a sacred flame burning quietly in the dark. Selene was drawn to him, as the moon is drawn to the earth, circling it faithfully every night. She descended silently, as a silver shadow slipping through the clouds, to watch him from the edge of the forest. Endymion was unaware of her presence, wrapped in a blanket of stars and silence, his breath slow and even as he rested beneath the ancient trees. The goddess lingered, her heart swelling with a feeling she had never known, a tenderness so deep it felt like the moonlight itself. In those quiet hours, she touched his hair with a soft light, traced the curve of his cheek, and whispered a blessing only the night could hear. Selene longed to be near him, to hold him, to protect him, but she was bound by her nature, goddess of the moon, forever watching from afar, never truly part of the world below. And so, night after night, she returned to him, watching over his sleep, guarding his dreams. Her love was silent, pure, unspoken, but it grew with each passing moment, a quiet flame burning steadily in the darkness. Endymion, in his gentle solitude, felt the presence of something greater. Sometimes, when he awoke beneath the stars, he would catch a glimpse of silver light lingering near, or hear the faintest echo of a song, carried on the night breeze. He did not understand, but his heart was open, his soul, like the earth, ready to receive the light. And Selene, she was patient, waiting for the moment, when their worlds could finally touch. Night after night, as the world fell into quiet slumber, Selene descended from her silver throne, her pale light weaving through the darkness, to touch the gentle figure of Endymion. Their meetings were whispered secrets, soft and slow, like the gentle unfolding of petals at dawn. She did not disturb his sleep, only watched over him, a silent guardian of his dreams. Sometimes, she would sit beside him on the cool grass, her light casting a glow like 1,000 tiny stars. Endymion would stir, half awake, half dreaming, and meet her gaze with eyes full of wonder. Words were not always necessary. Their connection was deeper than speech, woven from shared moments and quiet understanding. Selene spoke in the language of moonlight, her love expressed in the soft brush of silver across his skin, in the warmth that grew beneath the night's cool embrace. Endymion, in turn, offered his own gift, his gentle presence, the kindness that radiated from his heart, and the peace that settled wherever he wandered. Together, they created a world apart from time, where the worries of day faded, and only love remained. Selene's affection blossomed slowly, like a flower opening under the moon's tender watch. She cherished every moment, every breath, every soft smile, and with each visit, her love deepened, becoming a quiet song that echoed in the stars. But such love, born from different worlds, was not without its struggles. Selene was a goddess, bound to the eternal cycle of night and day. Endymion was mortal, tied to the earth and its fleeting time. They lived between two realms, connected yet separated by the very nature of existence. This truth hung between them, a delicate thread, woven from longing and loss. Yet, they did not falter. Instead, they embraced the moments they had, knowing that love, no matter how brief, was a gift beyond measure. The villagers of Caria whispered tales of the shepherd who slept beneath the stars, and the moon goddess who loved him. Some said that Endymion was blessed with eternal youth, while others believed he was caught in a dream, from which he might never wake. But those who truly knew the story understood that love had transformed both of them. Selene found a reason to linger on earth, and Endymion found a light to guide him through the darkness. And so, beneath the silver glow of the moon, their love grew quietly, softly, like the slow, steady turning of the night. As the nights deepened and the silver moon traced its endless path across the sky, Selene's love for Endymion grew stronger, a gentle flame glowing softly in the darkness. Yet, in the quiet spaces between their meetings, a question lingered, a question as old as the stars themselves. Could love between a mortal and a goddess ever last? Could the fragile threads that bound them withstand the weight of time? Selene pondered this deeply. She was bound by her divine nature, eternal, unchanging, forever circling the earth in her silent vigil. Endymion was mortal. His heart beat with the fleeting rhythm of human life, his days numbered like grains of sand. The thought of losing him to the relentless march of time filled Selene with a quiet sorrow. She sought the wisdom of the gods, those who watched from their lofty heights, untouched by mortal concerns. She asked them for a gift, a way to hold Endymion close, to keep him safe from the shadows of death. And the gods, moved by her plea, offered a choice. Endymion could be granted eternal sleep, a slumber untouched by time, where he would rest forever, preserved in the soft embrace of night. He would never age, never suffer pain, never face the cold grip of death. But he would never awaken. Selene brought this choice to Endymion. On a night when the stars shimmered like scattered diamonds, she spoke softly, her voice like the wind through olive leaves. You may choose to sleep, to rest beyond the reach of time, and I will keep you safe, in my light forever. Endymion listened. His eyes reflected the moon's gentle glow, and his heart beat with the weight of the decision. He thought of the world he loved, the hills, the rivers, the creatures of the earth. He thought of Selene, her light, her grace, her endless watch, and he understood. To choose eternal sleep was to leave behind the world of waking, to become part of the night's eternal song. But it was also to remain, forever held in love's quiet arms. With a slow breath, Endymion made his choice. He would sleep. And so, beneath the moon's tender gaze, he closed his eyes, and drifted into a sleep without end. Selene cradled him in her arms, her light wrapping him like a soft blanket. She watched over him through endless nights, her love a steady pulse in the silence. While Endymion lay in eternal sleep beneath the soft glow of the moon, the world around him continued its gentle turning. Seasons changed as they always had. Spring's fresh bloom, summer's warm embrace, autumn's quiet fading, and winter's soft hush. Birds sang their songs with the rising sun, and the rivers flowed endlessly toward the sea. Mount Latmus stood tall and silent, its slopes touched by sunlight by day, and bathed in moonlight by night. The villagers of Caria went about their lives, telling stories of the shepherd who slept forever, and the goddess who watched over him. Some believed that Endymion's sleep was a blessing, a gift of peace beyond human reach. Others thought it a mystery, a secret whispered by the stars. Yet, beneath it all, there was a quiet magic, a stillness that wrapped the land like a gentle breeze. And in that stillness, love lived on. Selene remained by Endymion's side night after night, her light a constant presence in the darkness. She traced the lines of his face with silver fingers, whispered songs only the stars could hear, and held him in the warmth of her eternal care. Though he slept, their love did not fade. It grew in the silence, in the spaces between dreams, in the quiet moments when the world seemed to hold its breath. Sometimes, travelers passing near Mount Latmus would feel a strange calm settle over them, a peacefulness that filled their hearts and quieted their worries. They would pause, look to the moonlit mountain, and sense something beyond words, a promise that love, true and gentle, can transcend even the boundaries of life and time. Time is a river, soft, ceaseless, flowing beyond reach. It carries moments like leaves, some bright and quick, others slow and fading, all moving toward an endless horizon. Beauty, like a whispered breath, is fragile, not in weakness, but in its quiet insistence. To be noticed, to be held gently. Sleep is a gift, a pause in the dance of days, a surrender to peace, where the heart rests, and dreams take flight. The moon watches all of this, a silent guardian in the night, its light a soft embrace. For those who wander beneath, Endymion's story is a lullaby, a gentle reminder that love and beauty do not vanish with the setting sun. They linger, in shadow and light, in silence and dreams. And so, as you close your eyes tonight, listen to the hush between breaths, feel the steady rhythm of your heart, and know that in the quiet, there is peace, there is love, there is the soft glow of the moon, watching over you, always. If you want, I can now help you format it for audio narration, or prepare scene-by-scene AI image prompts, or anything else you need. Here's a gentle, soothing closing for your full 2-hour sleep storytelling script, designed to bring calm and peaceful closure. And now, dear listener, our journey through these quiet myths draws to a close. 3 stories told softly, not to awaken your mind, but to ease it gently into rest. May the music of Orpheus linger in your heart, a melody of love that never fades. May the courage of Daedalus inspire you to dream, to reach for the sky with care and hope. And may the eternal sleep of Endymion remind you that peace can be found in the quietest moments, beneath the watchful moon. Close your eyes now, breathe deeply, let the world slip away. As your thoughts become still, the night is yours, safe and calm. May your dreams be soft, your sleep deep, and your waking gentle. Until next time, rest well. Good night.